Hi everyone, I'm Drew. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through the installation of Dezod Motorsports stainless steel brake line kit for Scion FRS and Subaru BRZ. These high-performance lines are composed of a Teflon core surrounded by a tight braid of stainless steel strands and a protective charcoal-colored plastic coating. The brake line kit includes front and rear lines, copper gaskets, and new union bolts. Be sure to find a work area with plenty of room. You'll need access to all four corners of the vehicle. For tools, you need a basic socket wrench set, extensions, a torque wrench, 10, 12, and 15 mm box wrenches, a crescent wrench, a lug nut wrench, and most importantly, a 10 mm flare nut wrench. This special wrench allows you to loosen the flare nuts on the brake lines without stripping or otherwise damaging them. To lift and support the car, you'll need a jack and jack stands, preferably 4, because being able to have all the wheels off the car at once will make bleeding the brakes easier. The brake bleed process will also require fresh fluid, a container to catch the used fluid, a funnel, and some clear plastic tubing. Alright, now the first step is to jack up the front of the car and remove the front wheels. Once the car is safely placed on a pair of jack stands, get the wheels out of the way and look for the stock brake line in the wheel well. Break loose the 12 mm union bolt that secures the stock brake line to the brake caliper. Be sure to place a container below the caliper because when you remove the brake line, fluid is going to pour out. Set the original union bolt and washers aside. You will not be reusing them. Now follow the brake line about halfway up to find the 10 mm bolt that secures the brake line mounting tab. Remove it. The line will now hang freely. It's now time to remove the flare nut that connects the rubber brake line to the hard lines. Slide your flare nut wrench over the hard lines, fit it onto the flare nut, and loosen it. Once the flare nut is loose, use a pair of pliers to remove the metal clip that secures the brake line fitting. You can now remove the stock brake line. Set your stock line aside and grab your new Dezod brake line. Installation is simply the removal process in reverse. Screw the brake line fitting onto the flare nut, but only finger tight. The line needs to be able to rotate so that you can route it properly. Place the metal clip onto the brake line fitting to hold it in place. Find the mounting tab, slide it into a good location, and secure it to the car using the factory 10 mm bolt. Now take your new union bolt and copper washers and fit them onto the union fitting so that there are copper washers on either side of the fitting. Thread the union bolt into the back of the caliper and make sure the line passes through the metal slot. While the stock union bolts were 12 mm, the new ones are 15. Once it's snugged up, use a torque wrench to tighten to 18 Nm or 13 foot-pounds. Now return to the flare nut and use your flare nut wrench to tighten it fully. If the line fitting begins to spin, use an adjustable crescent wrench to hold it so that you can get the flare nut nice and tight. That's all there is to it. Your new brake line is installed. Repeat the process on the other side of the vehicle and then move on to the rear lines. Jack up the rear of the car, support it with jack stands, and remove the rear wheels. You should now have all 4 wheels off the car. The process for the rear lines is almost the same as for the front lines. Begin at the 12 mm union bolt. I found that my socket driver couldn't fit between the suspension and the caliper, so I used a box wrench instead. Remember that when you remove the bolt, fluid is going to spill out, so be sure to catch it in a container. Move on to the 10mm bolt that secures the support tab as before. Loosen the flare nut using your flare nut wrench. Remove the metal clip. And the old line is ready to come out. Begin installation of the new line as before by finger tightening the flare nut. Secure the mounting tab using the stock 10mm bolt, and then attach the curved union fitting to the rear of the caliper, again ensuring that the fitting is sandwiched between two copper washers. Again, torque this bolt down to 18 Nm for 13 foot-pounds of torque. With the line fully in position, you can now tighten down the flare nut using your flare nut wrench and an adjustable crescent wrench. Repeat this installation process for the other rear brake line so that you have all 4 lines installed. It's now time to bleed the brakes. Remove the black cap from the bleed screw on the rear of the caliper and attach the clear plastic tubing. Place the other end of the tube in the container to catch brake fluid. Have a partner pressurize the system by pumping the brakes, then loosen the bleed screw a quarter of a turn. You should see fluid and air bubbles come out. Repeat these steps until you see only brake fluid come out and no bubbles. Perform this process on all 4 corners of the vehicle in this order: passenger rear, driver's rear, passenger front, driver's front. When you aren't seeing any more air bubbles from any of the brakes, I recommend making one more pass around each corner. Also remember that as you bleed the brakes, the fluid level in the reservoir is going to drop, so continuously add new fluid. When you're confident that you've gotten all the air out of the system, reinstall your wheels and lower your car back onto the ground. And that's all there is to it. Get out and enjoy your car.
So I've had the brake line kit on my car for a few weeks now, and I'm definitely happy with it. That initial bite when you first get on the pedal is much sharper. That initial brake force is just much more instantaneous, and overall brake feel is much improved. Braking is also more precise. A given pedal pressure gives a more consistent brake response. This is great for brake techniques like trail braking, where you want to have precise control over the weight distribution as you enter a turn. Or just overdo it and oversteer for the funds. Overall, I definitely recommend this mod. It's a relatively inexpensive way to increase your brake performance and the overall feel of your car. Visit www.dezod.com for this and other great products.